Hello, I'm Chuck Phillip with South Alabama Home Inspections, and welcome to another edition of Hurricane Ready. This is Riding the Storm Out Part 6 of Episode 46. Hopefully you'll take the time to watch this entire episode. We've been trying to keep them short and to the point, and also go check out the other ones we have listed on our channel, Southern Home Talk, and please hit the like and subscribe button. This definitely will help us in continuing this effort of putting out other episodes. And these are kind of interesting and to the point because they're pretty much based on our personal experience in dealing with these storms down here along the Gulf Coast. It's now 6 to 8 hours before the storm makes landfall, so hopefully you have gotten everything you need to get done on the outside completed, including your storm shutters, and hopefully your generator, if you have one, is ready to roll. So now it's just a matter of time of riding this thing out. I remember back during Hurricane Camille back in '69 and Hurricane Frederick in '79. Well, in '69, I slept through Camille and just woke up to a lot of debris on the outside. And Hurricane Frederick, that thing was so loud, I don't think anybody could have slept through that. But there, believe it or not, there are some people who did, and my wife was one of them. But I don't recommend doing that. I think it's a good idea that you get a good night's sleep or a good day's sleep if this thing is scheduled to hit at midnight or later, so you can be awake during a storm, because there may be some times during this event that you might have to make some split-second emergency decisions. When Hurricane Camille hit in 1969, you're looking at an apartment called the Richelieu Apartments in Pass Christian, Mississippi, and this is pretty much what was left of it. Apparently, 24 people decided to have a hurricane party here, and of the 24, only one survived. And so the point I guess I'm trying to make here is if you live along the coast or if you live in a low-lying area, you should evacuate. But at the bare minimum, you shouldn't be drinking, because there's a good chance you're going to have to make some life and death decisions. Now, I would also want to keep an axe inside the house. Hopefully, I know that may seem radical to some people, but it's probably a good idea to have one inside, because if one part of the house collapses and you're on one side of the house, you may have to bust your way through there. So it's just a good thing to have whether you need it or not. And I'd also keep a large fire extinguisher in the house as well, just in case you have to put out a fire. I know this is usually something that no one probably ever experienced during a hurricane, but you really can't be over cautious. You just really have to be prepared. Now, one thing I do recommend is that you dress for the occasion, and I would put on some pretty rugged clothes, the most rugged clothes you have, just in case you have to start taking care of some emergency situations within the house or even outside. And so everybody in the family should be dressed pretty ruggedly as if you were going camping. And I'd also keep a headlight like this here. I don't know if you don't have this already, well, then that's fine. But if you do have a flashlight, I would keep it in my pocket. I wouldn't want to set it down somewhere and have to find it and forget where I left it. So keep your light on you as well. The main thing is you just want to stay informed before, during, and after the hurricane. And probably a good way to do this is with the weather radio. However, one of the storms that I went through, I got tired of hearing all the alarms going off. It wasn't on this particular model here. It just got aggravating to listen to. So I finally just tuned into one of the local radio stations and stayed informed that way. But you do want to stay informed. I remember after the storm hit in 1979, we were the only house on the entire block that had landline service. I don't think there's that many people that have landlines anymore, and it was probably just luck that we had that. We certainly didn't have power for over a week, but there's a good chance that landline service and even cell phone service may not be available because the towers may be destroyed or damaged. And so maybe another alternative would be walkie-talkies, and maybe a good scenario for these is you have one and your neighbor have the other, so you can kind of communicate between the two of you. But it's also possible that you won't be able to get a hold of 911. And then if you were able to get through to them, it's not likely they would be able to respond because of the storm itself. So this is just something to consider. And you may want to consider, if you have time, if you're watching this video before the storm season, to maybe look at getting into CB radio or ham radio. If you have pets, you want to try to let them use the restroom as much as possible before it really gets bad outside. And if you have a pet door, like on the right picture, hopefully you have one of the slides that go over this to block this off to keep wind from blowing into the house. If you don't have that door panel that comes with this, you probably want to find another way to block this off, maybe with a piece of plywood. And it's a possibility that you're going to have to allow your pets to use the restroom inside the house. One of the other slide presentations I put out there, that probably a good thing to put in your house is maybe some AstroTurf, so they'll have a place to go. So you got to keep your pets in mind. And not only that, I mean, they may panic some during the storm because it is pretty loud. They haven't experienced this either. And so depending on your pet's demeanor, maybe if you're watching this video prior to any storm coming in the future, you can go to the vet and get some tranquilizing pills for your pets. I had to do that with my dog. She got upset at every thunderstorm that came through, and we tried those thunder jackets. They didn't do anything at all. So the only thing that would help her was those tranquilizer pills. So, if you got time to do that, I would recommend that you get some of those and have them on hand for your pets. If your house is not in a low-lying area or in a place where storm surge can get it, and pretty much on higher ground away from all that, chances are pretty good you're probably going to fare the storm out okay. A vast majority of these people that are killed in hurricanes is due to flooding or storm surge. But I'm going to tell you this, I mean, it's going to get really loud out there, and also there's going to be some big noise hitting your rooftop as well, especially if you have trees around it. And it doesn't take a big limb to really make a loud noise. It's like a drum. So if you want to practice this, maybe you can find a stick out in the front yard and throw it up on the roof, and you can take turns throwing it up there so you can hear what it's like. But, there again, if you're paranoid of these hurricanes, and they issue a mandatory evacuation order, that's something you want to do. But on the other hand, if you live in a good house, a good sound structure on high ground, you're probably going to be okay. One thing I want to recommend is, before the storm hits, is to make sure your deadbolts are fully engaged into the door jamb. These do a pretty good job of keeping the doors from blowing in. And also keep some towels on hand in case any rain starts coming in underneath the doors. These usually do a pretty good job of stopping that. And also, if you have metal cans, I've talked about this in a previous slide presentation, bring them inside the house so that way you have a way to catch any water if you have any roof leaks. You may want to consider at the peak of the storm to get to the center hallway of the house, and also make sure all the doors are closed. So this would be a fairly decent place for you and your family to gather. But if there's any light parts of the storm where it calms down some, and if you got the attic staircase in the hallway, that'd be a good time to drop your stairs and climb up the ladder and kind of take a peek inside with your flashlight to see if you can see any leaks. As part of doing home inspections, sometimes I find stained ceilings, and usually those stained ceilings are a result of long-term leaks. And what happens is there's a leak in the roof, and it leaks down onto the insulation down below, but it never does leak enough to where it comes all the way through the insulation and into the drywall. So this would be a good way to go up there and find out if you got any leaks. And I can't think of a better way to do that than during a hurricane, because you'll be able to firsthand see where your potential problems are up there in the attic if you have any at all. Another thing I would recommend is to get a good dinner before the storm comes. You really don't want to be hungry, during the peak hours of this. But this would also be a good time to explain to your children, what to expect and help calm their fears if there's any. So go ahead and try to fix you a good meal, and hopefully the storm will keep somewhat sort of a schedule with yours as far as dinner time. But if not, you may have to alter this as well. Well, we certainly have a different generation now than we did when I was growing up. And I know most of these kids play all these video games, and I would recommend that they do that during the storm, especially if you got power. This would be a good way to keep them occupied. But if you don't have power and don't have a generator, I would consider some board games that maybe you and your family could play. This keep them calm and yourself calm too. And you need to tell your kids, look, this is a bad storm coming through. It's going to make a lot of noise. You need to tell them ahead of time so that it's not a big surprise to them when it does show up. And you say, look, we're going to have a lot of loud noise tonight. We're going to have things hitting the roof, maybe the side of the house, but everything's going to be okay. We're going to play games. And then the next day, we're going to go out. You're going to help me clean all this stuff up. You really want to try to keep them at ease as much as possible. So, I'd have some games lined up and something to keep them occupied during this time. Now, I said that you should probably be awake. Well, you definitely should be awake during the storm, both you and your spouse. But maybe if the bedrooms are safe enough, or maybe the living room, if you got a lower level, like a basement, maybe that's a better place to be. Really, that should be the lower level of the house, but most people only have single level homes. It probably wouldn't be a bad idea to maybe let them sleep through it. I mean, maybe to cause them a lot less grief and stress just sleeping through the thing, but you certainly need to stay awake in case you need to deal with an emergency. As you can see from looking at this chart, that the majority of deaths from hurricanes is really water related. You have storm surge at 49%, you have rain at 27%, which really that's probably more due to flooding. And so storm surge combined with this can really put a lot of water in areas that's never seen it before. So if you live in a low-lying area, you should evacuate from those places because they're just not good places to be during these events. But you can also see that tornadoes maybe account for 3%, but a lot of these tornadoes spin usually north of the storm, and usually further inland. And then you have other 1%, and these are probably people after the storm that's gone out and got electrocuted by down power lines. But let's just get really to the point. Let's look at the wind at 8%. So even this, I have to wonder, these people that were killed, more than likely they were out running around during the storm. Maybe they're storm chasers, and they should have been sheltering in place. So you can just tell from looking at the chart that if you live in a pretty decent structure, maybe not a mobile home, but a brick house or a framed house that's in a high area, chances are very good that you're going to be fine during this hurricane. And even if you live in a newer house, especially if it's gold fortified, you're going to fare pretty well in that as well. So the thing is there's really not much need to panic unless you live in a low-lying area or in an unsecured structure. So just know that going into this storm. Thanks for taking the time to watch this presentation. And also please subscribe to Southern Home Talk and view the other hurricane preparedness videos. We really have narrowed these down to topics that you generally wouldn't find in your overall to-do list. And I'll tell you something else too. We can also come out to your house and personally inspect it. And this would be a very good way to narrow down some of the issues that you may be facing and some tips you could probably use as far as shoring up your house for both storm and hurricane preparedness. Thanks again.